currently the chair of the BCS IRMA specialist group. It's really good for everyone to join us here at this event. And hopefully, as you can see from my background, next time out in the event, hopefully we'll be live in London, ready for our next event as well. Tonight is all about control frameworks for a drone infrastructure. It's something that we've been working on at our practice here, and I hope you get a lot out of the session today. Just a few things to mention before we do kick off. This session is open both to BCS members and to non-BCS members as well. If you're not a BCS member, do feel free to have a look at the website, www.bcs.org, where you can look at the different variety of member packages which you can take off. And it really helps set your career off in the right direction, particularly if you're on that early career path. With regards to the membership benefits as well, attending events not just through the IRMA SG, but through specialist groups across the BCS will end up paying for your membership easily in a year. And of course, it's fantastic to have on your CV as well. With regards to questions today, I'll be undertaking the presentation, and we can put questions in the chat as well. There is a chat facility here, and Andy, my co-chairman, will be addressing those right at the end of the session. The plan for the session today is 45 minutes for the presentation, and then at approximately 7:15, then we'll be taking time for questions thereon after. If everyone is sitting tightly, let's start off then with today's presentation. I am Darren Roberts. As I said, I am currently the chair of the BCS IRMA specialist group, but with my other hat on as well, I'm also the assistant director for ICT, digital and cyber audit at SWAP Internal Audit Services. SWAP Internal Audit Services provide internal audit function and services to the public sector, to local authorities and to the third sector. So at the end of the day, that is my field of expertise here as well. What I will be doing though is addressing additional elements with regards to drone infrastructures for the private and global sector as well. We're a small independent company owned wholly by our local authorities. As I said, we don't cover the private sector, but we do pride ourselves on delivering quality assurance across the public sector, helping them to succeed going forward. One thing as a BCS chair I do need to mention is the BCS's Vital Worker campaign. As we know, throughout the pandemic, there have been many heroes across the country that have kept things going, particularly in the health and social care sector. But had it have not been for the vital workers in the IT sector, we wouldn't even be doing this today. So the Vital Worker campaign appreciates the work that's being done by IT people and the contribution that they've made throughout the last 15 months. You can find out more about how you can take part in the BCS campaign at bcs.org/vital workers. And if you do want to know more about the BCS, then please hold on until the end, and we'll give you a few more details on how you can join our institute and make IT good for society. Okay, so today is about the control frameworks for the drone infrastructure. So what I want to talk about today is the risks and the controls that we need to consider as technology assurance specialists. Now, I'd like to present this as my own work. However, additional research for this presentation today has been by Tom. Tom is actually joining us on the call here today. And Tom's also one of our early development, early careers ICT auditors as well. Let's just inform you, Tom's taking his CSER exams very, very soon. So through this community today, let's wish Tom all the very best with his CSER exams going forward. So as we go forward, thank you very much, Tom, for your additional research into this presentation today. So what's the objectives for today's session? Well, first of all, we need to consider it necessary for the risks for this type of emerging technology going forward. I want to define what would actually be meant by a drone and actually what types of those do actually exist. Because in many people's eyes, that may be the thing that's perhaps in our picture there with regards to the flying automated vehicle. We must consider the disruption of the drone use as well, with regards to not just the disruption with regards to the business processes, but the disruptions that drones could cause when things sometimes may go wrong. What I want to do is examine the outline risks before an organization considers a drone-based solution going forward. And at the end, I want to have a look at some suggested items going forward for a future audit work program. So where did we start off with this? This is, for me, everything to do with emerging technology. Back in September 2020, the BCS IRMA SG held a joint session with ISACA at the North London branch, where we identified the significant areas of emerging technology from the report produced by the World Economic Forum. For me, this opened up areas for development for ICT audit and the assurance professionals. And what it also underlined to me with regards to emerging technology was the necessity for that collaboration going forward with other control areas, with the other specialist groups, such as the BCS law, the ethics, and the internet specialist group as well. As we go through the presentation, hopefully you'll see the additional links. So it expands what we must do as technology assurance professionals, and it increases our skills into these outreach to these other areas through that emerging technology. And as a BCS professional, and as the BCS professionals on this call know, this emerging technology must be good for society. And as technology assurance specialists, we need to be at the forefront of that. But here's the question: how prepared are you for quick moving and emerging technology? Okay, what do we do as good auditors? We always look and see what the scope is of what we're going to be looking at. So just very quickly, let's talk about back to basics of what we're talking about here as a drone. So generally then it would be an unmanned device controlled and configured remotely, but it could be one of many, can take one of many elements as well. It could be an aerial device, rotor or propelled. It could be a ground-based device, a marine device, over and underwater. But lots of people say to me very recently, Darren, what's the difference between the drone and the robot? And this could be an area for contention, and I'd welcome views on this. As far as I'm concerned, the drone would be the one that would have that advanced capabilities with it, the one that has the data capture, enables the real-time communications, can enable onboard data analysis, can onboard with artificial intelligence. If I was to use a demystified example, if you think of a trawler that would go out and collect and catch fish and then bring those fish into the catch back to the harbour side, comparing that to the fish processing boat that goes out and catches the fish, and while they're at sea, processes the fish, tins the fish, and actually when they get back to the harbour, the lorry's waiting to take it off to the supermarket. For me, those are the distinct differences between what we would necessarily describe as a robot compared to what we would do with a drone. We also need to think about the considerations for the usage. Traditionally, drones have been around as leisure articles. So you see them for use on YouTube, or you see hobbyists. But we've got to consider the usage of drones going forward into that commercial environment. So let's give a few examples that we've come across here in SWAP, where drones have been used, certainly in the public sector environment. Most recently, monitoring, large-scale surveillance and security. And that's been even more pertinent during this time of the pandemic. We've got partners that have some of the largest seaside resorts in the country. So they've been using drones to manage beach content and with regards to the capacity within beaches. So it enables them to move really, really quickly with both the drone and the CCT infrastructure to ensure that people move around and enjoy their days safely. And indeed, if you were watching the Euro final, as most of us were on Sunday, drones were used there to manage the crowds coming in and out of Wembley. It's an easier way of doing that without putting people down on the ground. They're also used increasingly now in emergency and disaster response. Although I must say in that picture, that drone's got to have a pretty high water capability if it's going to put a fire out. But seriously though, they can be used in an emergency situation in areas where traditionally emergency workers could be put at risk. So say, for instance, if there was a risk of a building collapse or an explosion, then it's probably better that we'd end up losing the drone rather than sadly losing an emergency worker. We've seen an increasing use of them in agricultural and environmental settings as well. So the farming community, particularly those with large agricultural settings, are using drones to manage crop rotation and to manage livestock as well. In fact, they can go out and make specific decisions with regards to livestock movements, particularly, say, for instance, on very cold winter days. And going forward, this is what we've increasingly seen in the local authority setting, is that they're used for infrastructure inspection and planning as well. So once again, rather than sending people up on platforms or putting people's safety at risk, then not only can the drone go up and undertake that inspection, but it can actually add enhanced capability with regards to the inspection routines that they've got going forward. And here's the future use. Is this speculation or could this be reality? We know that Amazon are already trying out personal deliveries. So for me, though, I think that would only work if you were sort of very near an Amazon depot. Let's see. Personal transportation. That picture there is from a trial that's actually happening in Seoul at the moment to transfer people from terminals between the airports. And I know that that is happening in Dubai at the moment as well, to actually use drones as individual air taxis. They can go ahead and undertake human tasks going forward. We mentioned about agriculture earlier. Certainly already there's instances where not only the drones can undertake the crop surveys, but can end up actually doing planting, sowing seeds, etc. And one thing that's probably going to explode with regards to the future use of drones going forward is the impact of 5G. So the capability of returning data stored on that drone and communicate to that out at a far quicker rate than it ever could before. I think that would probably warrant a separate presentation. So I'm going to be moving on from that right now. And one big thing for me, being a member of the BCS, is drones and ethics. I've got a particular concern over the autonomous capability of weaponized drones going forward. And certainly people have got specific concerns over privacy and wider human rights as well. And of course, there are still concerns over drones in criminal activity. Recent reports in the media show that drones are used, for instance, to introduce contraband and drugs into prisons. And there's concern over development of the artificial capability of drones as well. If I don't need to point to, of course, the film Terminator with Skynet, at what point are we away from that kind of intelligent capability from there? Some people feel very, very uncomfortable about that. So we do have to consider the ethical elements as well. Okay, then, so here we are. The CEO's had this fantastic idea, and he wants to start rolling out a drone infrastructure to replace specific business processes in his organization. What's the sort of thing that we need to watch out for in that first instance when we're in front of the board? The first thing I'd say is be clear over what processes are going to be delivered or enhanced by that drone usage. These things aren't little toys that we use to record YouTube videos. These are going to be serious pieces of kit. We need to be clear what type of drone is going to go ahead and make up that infrastructure, because they need to be clear over the return on the investment. We also need to be clear that all aspects of regulation, asset management, training, disruption, and security are fully considered. And this is where us as technology assurance specialists can provide that added value right from that early business case stage. Let's have a look at some of the risks then. So first of all then, how would the drone be used? The organization needs to have a look and identify the business processes that it will go ahead and replace. And what disruption will the use of that cause? And how would the regression of that be achieved? If that doesn't work, how are they going to regress back to the previous process that they were using before? Particularly here in the public sector, there can be impacts on incumbent staff. So you may get your staff union involved with regards to concerns that they've got over staff redundancies or staff reductions. Let's give an example, say for instance, let's say the emergency response people can now send up a drone where previously they used to send up a helicopter that probably would have had a monitoring officer inside and a fully trained pilot as well. Now, of course, those people are no longer required due to the increasing capabilities of the drone. What's the commissioning process? So who goes ahead and selects what device is required and actually matches that against the process and ensuring that the organization is getting that value for money and can actually evidence the return on investment? And finally, who's going to be responsible for the formulation of the strategy and the policy around it? It's really important to keep banging through the message that it isn't just a case of buying one of these devices and sending it up in the sky. There's lots and lots of strategy, policy and compliance that needs to be done before we start at the time of the business case stage. So, because of course, they need to be clear on what drone will be used. Remember, this is our slide from earlier. It could be an aerial device, ground-based, marine-based, and it will have advanced capabilities. The market for these is absolutely huge, no different to buying any other piece of technology kit. So they need to be absolutely clear on what this is going to be used for. Because at the end of the day, this tends to be people's expectations. That lovely holiday in Italy where you've sent the drone up and you've sent the video off to Auntie. Actually, with regards to the commercial use of drones, this tends to be the actual reality, where you'll find yourself bogged down in paperwork. You'll find yourself bogged down with compliance, strategy, and policy. Because here's the thing: these are actually required. And here's the problem. These aerial devices are actually classed as aircraft and are regulated in the UK by the CAA. And of course, depending on the type of device that you buy, you may also need a flyer ID, an operator ID, or both. As you can see from there, a device that is below 250 grams is classed as a toy. But if you think about it, 250 grams isn't very much. And if you probably want the advanced capability of what you're going to be needing a drone for in the commercial environment, then it's highly likely that it's going to weigh more than that. So straight away, you fall into the regulatory environment of the Civil Aviation Authority. Also, the intended use against the business process. As I said, the market is quite wide out there. What do you want the device to do? There's all sorts of things you need to think about. Flight time, distance covered, how high do you want the thing to go? What do you want it to, what sort of kit do you want in there with regards to camera and storage? Here's the other thing: how many will you need? If you're going to be replacing, say, for instance, your entire building control infrastructure with drones, then it's likely you may need a fleet of them. And of course, that's going to be a capital investment. As you can see on the right-hand side, folks, these things aren't cheap at £10,500, and that's just for one. So if you're looking at, for instance, rolling out a fleet of these across the suite for a small to medium enterprise, you're probably looking at the best side of £80,000. And I would say that that is a piece of kit that really you need to look after and make sure that it doesn't crash, it doesn't get broken, or no one fires it down. And here's the thing: the choice of the device will influence how you're going to operate that drone with regards to your strategy and policy around compliance. These are the different classes around each of the drones, and these actually have to be attached to each of the devices in accordance with the Civil Aviation Authority regulations as well. As you can see, for everything going from C1 upwards, which is more than likely going to be the sort of commercial value drone that you're going to be needing, both a flyer ID and an operator ID is required. Now, speaking from a local authority side of things, because that's my area of expertise, here's some of the stuff that I pulled off recently from LocalGov from a survey they did back in January 2020. 36% of local authorities have currently procured external drone services, but here's the thing: only 6% of them have been granted the permission for commercial operations. And a number of local authorities will use drones in a way that break the law and have policies based on legislation that is either superseded or out of date. How would that have been mitigated? By having your technology assurance auditors involved right at the business case stage. Going forward then on strategy and policy, only 4% of local authorities have a policy or strategy to benefit from drone and UAV-based services. Once again, it's just stuck up in the sky and hopes that it delivers benefits. Here's the other thing: 17% have a lead officer with responsibility for the policy relating to drones and UAVs. As you've seen earlier, specific compliance issues come from the CAA. Now, in most organisations, I suppose unless you're an airline, you're not really going to have any dealings with the CAA. So really you need to have a look and see with regards to the lead officers who is actually responsible for any elements on that, because if any breaches happen, it's going to come back to that person. So the introduction of drone services, it seems quick and cost effective. And believe you me, of course, according to some of these figures here, it is, but it still must be carried out in a structured way. You will break the law if you break those regulations. So what will happen when things go wrong? Well, first of all, there's the physical risk. Accidental damage to property. As we've seen from the media very recently, drones have disrupted flight paths in Gatwick and Heathrow, and certainly if they end up striking another aircraft, they can cause significant damage. There's a data breach risk as well. These things do collect data. So where are the storage and data flows that come out of these devices? Like any piece of technology, they are exposed to a cyber attack risk as well. There are specific elements with things such as drone exploit that can gain control of the device or launch an attack on the data. Or likewise, there could be even a malicious drone that's down there hunting out your drone. Perhaps it is Terminator all over again. The financial risk. Could you afford to lose this device or even repair it? Remember earlier that device, it was £10,500. So if that was lost in an accident or was crashed due to the fact that your operator hadn't received the appropriate training, could you afford to lose that or replace that? And finally, of course, there's the non-compliance risk. As we've seen from the percentage statistics earlier, the specific risk around the flight of an unauthorized device. And we must also consider the general public. Now, PwC produced a report called Building Trust in Drones, and they revealed that only 31% of the public feel positive towards the drone technology, with the biggest concerns at the improper use of drones, that 70% of respondents wanted the routes to be registered with the CAA. Well, believe you me, let's have a look at some of the purposes that we want to use drones for earlier. Say, for instance, the beach monitoring. That'd be literally impossible to do. And I can't imagine that would go down too well with the farming community either. So it is something that we all need to work on collectively with regards to that building trust going forward, because many people do very much see them as very intrusive in society. That includes me as well. About 3 weeks ago, one flew over my garden, and the first thing I thought was, what the hell's that thing flying up there? The thing is, if it's just one anonymous drone, you're not going to know about it. But perhaps if it was branded or something like that, I would have had a little bit more assurance about it. But certainly with regards to the public's views, we need to take those into account. Now, one thing that we do have to consider, of course, is insurance. Now, drones below 20K can be flown without insurance, but again, look, it's for recreation purposes. They must have insurance for any other reason. If we're looking at that device that we were looking at earlier, the one that was costing us around £10,000, it's likely that that's going to be a drone over 20K, and it must have insurance then for whatever purpose. And that must include damage to a third person or property, and of course, damage to the device lost or stolen. And on top of that as well, the insurance with regards to the data breach or loss. I would advise highly that if you're looking and you're auditing through a specific business case, that the overall cost of that does include the insurance, because as I said, that's one that's often overlooked in business cases with regards to rolling out the drone infrastructure. Whose responsibility is this? What do you regard a drone as? Is it part of the transport infrastructure? Is it part of the information governance infrastructure? Is it part of ICT? That's for the organization to work out, because there needs to be a lead officer or a manager responsible for that organization's drone use, and specifically with regards to the reports they need to do back to the CAA. So here's another point for discussion. Should they be in the ICT service or not? Now, coming as a technology auditor, with regards to some of the mitigating controls I'll talk about later, I say yes, but are they? Perhaps an item for discussion. And one thing that we do need to consider is the training of those staff who end up using those devices. Number one, CAA compliance, making sure that they are compliant with that, because they must pass a theory exam before they get a flyer ID. They must make sure that they're aware of the cyber risks with regards to the use of these devices, and how to undertake breach notifications and undertake the capability of flying these things and how to configure them going forward as well. And going forward then, there's the risks around the business continuity. Is the drone infrastructure included within the business continuity plan? So if there was an incident or a regulation breach with your drones, could you continue to deliver that service or product? If, say, for instance, there was a regulation breach and the CAA told your organization to ground everything, but your entire process was now on the basis of drone flights going out on the basis of 8 devices 4 times a day, how could you go ahead and deliver that? So that then needs to be continued within your business continuity cycle going forward. So to wrap up here today, we're going to be talking about an audit work program. Now, this is one that we've been working on, and it would be really good actually if there was some sort of two-way dialogue going on at the end with regards to any inclusions or any additions or anything perhaps that you would fundamentally disagree with. Okay, so what we'll be looking at then. So first of all then, with regards to ensuring that the board and the senior leadership team are aware of this emerging technology and that their accountability and responsibility has been agreed and understood. If one of these things ends up crashing into a school and causes huge amounts of damage, who are the news crew going to talk to? The person with the responsibility for the drone or a member of the board or the senior leadership team? It's going to be the latter. So ensuring that they've got accountability and responsibility for this emerging technology. From that then, ensuring that there is a lead officer or manager with the responsibility for that drone policy, risk and strategy going forward. And it's really important to check that the active reporting line exists between the board and the senior leadership team. Going forward then, you must ensure that the strategy and policy regarding drone use has been completed, approved, is subject to change control and subject to periodic review as well. Because remember, of course, with regards to some of these elements, with regards to the flyer IDs and the operator IDs, these do need to be kept up to date. You must ensure that these documents cover the following: regulation and compliance, the commissioning process for the drone infrastructure, device management, staff compliance and training, data security and privacy policy, and links to the business continuity plan. I'm going to expand on all of those areas now with regards to some of the enhanced testing that we can do going forward. First of all then, on regulation and compliance. This is where I say perhaps the device needs to sit within ICT, because I think with regards to how we would record this would sit best within the asset inventory or the CMDB. Because with that as well, you can quite clearly link things such as flyer IDs, operator IDs. Also, with regards to the solutions that we have for CMDBs, they probably have the facility that will allow us to show expiry dates and triggers to ensure that reapplication for those IDs are done in good time. As far as auditors are concerned, of course, we would then need to assess within the CMDB how those flags are raised if it expires without it being renewed. So in effect, we're doing a very short piece of work here with regards to how that's recorded in the CMDB going forward or in the wider asset inventory. As with any piece of technology kit, it's vital that they've got to know what they've got, what needs replacing, and what the value is. The commissioning process. So if, say, for instance, the unfortunate happens and they need to buy another device, or say, for instance, 2 years down the road, the previous devices are no longer fit for purpose and they need to buy new ones. They need to ensure that that commissioning process going forward is included in their business case regime. The requirements with regards to how the drones are going to be used need to be clearly defined in order for them to return business benefit back and to return a return on investment as well. And I think it's also important that there's input from the Technical Design Authority that have provided comment with regards to the installation of these, the drone infrastructure into the wider infrastructure as well, particularly around some of the more intelligent drones that end up sending data perhaps directly back to servers, or say, for instance, have direct links back into the server infrastructure. So the TDA must have a view on that as part of the commissioning process. The device management. we must ensure that service and management contracts are in place, because at the end of the day, it's highly unlikely that within your ICT service or within your organization, there's going to be the capability to service and maintain these highly specialized pieces of kit. It's also a CAA requirement, of course, that the device is kept in serviceable working order. So ensuring that these service contracts are in place and ensuring that there's flags installed when they're due for renewal, probably again within the CMDB, are actually recorded. The other important thing is that changing configuration logs must be maintained for every device going forward, and that the business continuity arrangements are in place when a device is temporarily commissioned. But here's the thing, if you think about it, these are very similar controls, aren't they, that would be required for general aviation. I mean, for instance, you wouldn't want to send a plane up into the air without a service and maintenance contract. You wouldn't want to send it up into the air unless you had specific maintenance logs, change logs, etc., etc. So very, very similar. But as I said, more than likely, that isn't going to happen in-house. You're going to have to contract that out. So ensuring that the appropriate service and maintenance contracts in place will help you out there. Staff compliance and training. Okay, this is absolutely vital, because of course, if they're not trained properly, then the risks of the thing crashing or the things are data breach, etc., etc. So what I've said here is ensure that records are linked to the operators, showing their compliance and competence is up to date and subject to some really early review before expiry as well. That's mainly because if there's been any change in the regulations and they need to resit the exam, they're probably going to need time to go ahead and study for that. So the flag telling them they're due to that it's due to renew for next week probably wouldn't be much good for them. The other thing as well is if there has been a specific incident, and say, for instance, it wasn't your organization's fault, as part of the investigation, the CAA would probably want to see those records with regards to the records showing the compliance and competence of the operators, particularly if we were looking to evidence that it was a non-fault incident on your part. Ensure also that there are flight logs as well. Now that would include details of the operator and automatic flags that could highlight when an authorized operator has gone ahead and used the device. As I said, this may be required for future CAA investigations going forward. The big cookie, data security. So this would be really the normal sort of controls. We kind of moved away from the controls that we would need for a device in flight. Now we're looking at the stuff that it goes ahead and collects. So ensuring that the security in place to protect any data that would be stored on the device. So that could be encryption, that could be specific physical controls onto the device, and security in place as well if the device automatically sends the data back to a host as well. As I've said before, with the proliferation of 5G, it's likely that the person operating the drone will literally be that, just the operator. As it goes forward, it's likely that the intelligence with these devices going forward will automatically collect and send the data back. A good example of that is something that's happened in our Seaside partner, where it's enabled people to respond quite quickly back to the specific monitoring of the crowds going forward. And what I would suggest there is that we would undertake some walkthrough tests based on specific scenarios for potential breaches or attacks going forward. The second bit on the data security is ensure that the device is included in the patch update regimes, particularly for the updates for the onboard software and the firmware aboard the device as well. And doing some walkthrough tests and some scenario-based tests as well on the transmission between the device and the host to ensure that the transmission for that is encrypted. And moving back onto the policy, it's important to ensure that the policy does cover all elements of legislation. And I've listed just a few there, but I haven't meant to be exhaustive. So the Regulation of Investigatory Powers Act, which is also known as REPA. For the public sector, that's a big thing for us. It came about with things like searching through people's bins to see if two people lived in a property. As far as that's concerned, that breaks REPA regulations. That is to Big Brother So the elements of that are very much mirrored down onto drones. So this is where I'm saying here, ensuring that you engage with your litigation and your law team on this. And this is where it comes back to that statistic earlier, where sometimes perhaps in organizations, it might be worth pointing out perhaps who's got these specific skills with regards to litigation going forward, or if necessary, it may be part of the business case that you have to buy them in. Going forward then, GDPR, and of course then there's the Human Rights Act with specifically the specific right to privacy going forward as well. It's ensuring that, that the policy does cover those elements. It's not to say that you can't use the drone on the basis of the Human Rights Act, but it's ensuring that you are covering specific elements of that with regards to human privacy. And ensuring the policy reflects the training and the awareness given to the operators. And that's really, really important because, of course, that sets out your commitment going forward to the fact that the operators will be trained to use these things going forward, and in effect then mirrors back down to the fact that they'll be in place to undertake the specific elements of the policy and the compliance and the regulation. And finally, the links to the business continuity plan. I do hope that if the drone doesn't fall down, it doesn't cause the incident on the left. However, we do need to ensure that device activity relating to accidents, attack, now that could be physical attack or cyber attack. I know we've certainly come across issues where people have used air guns to shoot down drones because they don't like them very much. Part of that 31% of the public that don't like them very much. And specific failures, of course, the devices themselves may fail, bits on them may fail. All of that is updated then within the business continuity plan. And as well, ensuring that the incident response procedures are then up to date and robust with those specific flags going forward then for the timely review. As I said, treat it really as if it's another piece of ICT kit, so it just slots into your infrastructure. So if so, it falls into your service management routines with regards to business continuity and incident response going forward. Okay, so in summary, I think we've done quite well for time today. So as far as I'm concerned, drones are an emerging and a disruptive technology. I think it's really important as assurance specialists that it's not just the case of the picture on the right. It's something you just throw up in the air and it instantly delivers you the benefits back. The benefits can be quickly realized, but to use them in that commercial setting, we've got to consider the regulation and the requirement for that ongoing compliance. Because when things go wrong with these devices, you could be in big trouble. You must consider the support and the security regimes around this as well. Again, let's look at that device I looked at earlier. Serious piece of kit, £10,000. Who's going to maintain that in-house? Who's going to do the configuration? Who's going to do the specific setup on it? Who's going to look after the device? Who transports it, etc., etc.? All of this needs to be included then within the business case for that going forward. And of course, one of the other important elements, I didn't include it on the summary, was actually with regards to the insurance element as well, something people often overlook. But I do think that as audit and assurance professionals, we must be on hand quite quickly to advise on risks and emerging controls. So as I said, we attended this session with ISACA London in September 2020. I think we had our first inquiry with regards to a specific part of emerging technology in a local authority approximately 2 weeks after that. And of course, being internal audit, they come to us for answers with regards to specific issues on risk, and they want them quite quickly. And as far as I'm concerned, I want my service to be responsive to that. So I think as audit and assurance professionals, we must be on hand to advise on those risks and those emerging controls for all elements of emerging technology going forward. Okay, right then. So, we've done quite well. We've done that one today in 40 minutes. And I'm sure there are going to be plenty of elements for questions going forward. Andy, what have we got?
I'm going through the list of questions from the top. First question is from myself. Do we have any organization offering drone services in UK?
Loads.
Drone cabs.
Yeah, there are loads. And speaking from a public sector point of view, obviously what we would need to do is we would need to raise an official tender for that, etc., etc. What I would say, and this is part of that business case as well, the suppliers for these can give you some extremely specialized devices, extremely tailored to what you would go ahead and need. And that's why I say it's really important with regards to ensuring your organization has that business case in place, because otherwise they could quite easily end up with the wrong device, or the device that isn't going to give them that instant business benefit back. So I say right from the outset, Andy, get that business case right, and it's going to help you when you go out to market.
Thanks. Next question is from John Mitchell, who is asking, has the local government association produced any guidance in this area?
Yes, there has been. It has been quite recent, and I do have a web link for it, John, and I can forward that to you after this presentation.
Next question is from John again. What are the insurance requirements?
Oh, I think I talked those through, didn't I? So specifically they are to do with damage to property, damage to people, obviously damage to the device, and you can ramp it up as well with data security and data breach insurance as well. One thing I haven't investigated, mainly because of course we're not in a position to be buying drones ourselves here at Swap, is the actual cost of that. But what I would say as part of what we would need to do as assurance specialists is making sure that that has actually been taken into account. And I would say that it would be those different those elements really at a minimum you would expect to see as part of any insurance policy to support the infrastructure.
Right. I also have got one question. Some time ago I saw a video showing a drone delivering a bottle of drink.
Yes.
And this control was based on homing onto the mobile number of the recipient.
Yeah.
Now, based on this technology, how far are we away from making a drone to have sort of intercontinental flight by going from one person to another and being relaunched again to another person and so on and so forth to extend the range of the drone and its capability?
That's an interesting question, Andy. I think one of the huge limitations on that will be the range of the drone. At the end of the day, they're not actually designed to actually fly very far. Of course, the whole purpose of them is, well, as we've seen earlier, it's for monitoring, it's for inspections, it's for getting into very small places. I don't think at the moment there's necessarily any case for putting them over any kind of specific distance. Now, you heard me mention about the speculative use of it, and you mentioned there about deliveries. Now, I think that could possibly work very well in an urban environment, but me here on the Somerset levels, 8 miles away from Glastonbury, I don't think that the possibility of a drone delivering something here, I think it would go up and down the road 10 times trying to find my address. So I think that's part of the speculative stuff going forward, but nothing's off the table, of course, with regards to the way that things like this are going to go forward. What I would say, and one of the things I did look on the speculation side of it, is that I would be particularly interested in the use of drones as taxis going forward. I was in Gatwick last week. If you know Gatwick, there's a shuttle train that takes you in between the south and the north terminal, but it's completely automated. It's completely unmanned. So with regards to, I'm not flying in that drone because there's no one flying in it, well, you take the unmanned train, okay. So as far as I'm concerned, I think the public trust on that will be a lot better. So I think watch out going forward. I think there'll be more possibility of drones being used as kind of not mass personal transportation, but personal transportation for small groups of people over very small distances, say, for instance, between terminals at airports.
May I ask another question? There.
Yes.
Are they mainly powered by batteries?
Yes. Yes.
So there's no other fuel used in order to propel the drone.
Right, that depends, Andy. Yeah. So if it's a sort of you heard me mention earlier about sort of marine devices. So yes, there could be sort of different propellers, propellant used for those, but certainly with regards to the scope of what I started talking about with regards to the aerial devices, yes, that they will be battery powered.
Okay, thanks a lot. Well, there isn't any more question. If there is any question from the audience, please raise your hand.
Excellent.
No.
Okay. Right, well, thank you very much, everyone, for that. I hope you found it informative. Oh, hold on, Tony, yes.
Hi, Darren, nice to see you again.
Yeah, you too.
Do you know anything about the European regulations on like unmanned aircraft?
No, I haven't. I haven't covered that actually, Tony. I wanted to make it a UK-based one at the moment, and also, as I said, it's reflective on our own expertise at SWAP with regards to how we've helped out UK public authorities with it. But that certainly could be something that that could be worth looking into. So thank you for raising that.
No more questions?
Okay, right, that's great. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for joining us here today. This will be available on YouTube later on as well. The BCS events team will notify you about that going forward. So please feel free, if you need to, with regards to any inspiration for a work program going forward, please feel free to have a look at some of the suggested items that I've put forward there. As I said, I'm happy to share those going forward. Speaking back now from Darren Roberts, Assistant Director, to Darren Roberts, BCS Chair, IRMA. If you are a BCS member, please join our LinkedIn group, BCS IRMA SG, for virtual networking with over 200 IRMA members going forward. And if you are interested, there are a couple of vacancies on our committee going forward. If you are interested, then contact myself or Andy via the BCS IRMA webpage going forward as well. I do believe that is it for today. Let's have a look. It is. So with that, can I thank everyone for attending today? And as I said, again, thank you to Tom for his work with regards to the additional research that went into that today. So if anyone's hasn't got anything else to add, thank you very much for joining us, and do keep up to date with the IRMA SG page. Our next event is actually due in September. We're taking a small recess in August. Fingers crossed, folks, that's going to be live in London. If it is, I look forward to seeing you all there and catching up for some proper networking. In the meantime, have a great night, everyone. Thank you.